I am a former federal employee. I used to work for the federal government, and I've been debating making a video like this for a long time, but seeing all of the mass firings that are happening across all agencies in our federal government, I think it's important for me to talk about some of the things that I did in my role as a research analyst. Just because I think when people think about federal employees, they don't know what we do in our day-to-day, and I'm hoping I can give you some context and insight. So for 2 years, I was a research analyst at the Federal Trade Commission. Now, the Federal Trade Commission is one of the agencies that looks at mergers and acquisitions and decides whether or not to litigate, whether they should go through, or whether or not they should be stopped. It also investigates cases of consumer protection. So if a company is doing something maliciously that hurts the American people, the Federal Trade Commission can take them to court. Now, sectors of the economy are split up between the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice. I was specifically working in healthcare, which is why I worked at the Federal Trade Commission. And some of the things and projects that I did in my time in government were look at generic drug pricing cartels. So there was fear and evidence to demonstrate that these generic drug companies were allegedly price fixing pharmaceuticals that should have been pretty cheap considering how long they'd been generic. And actually, fairly recently, an economics paper came out confirming our findings that there was this price fixing going on of generic pharmaceuticals. I was also tasked with researching things like surprise medical bills. So back in the day, if you went to an in-network hospital but had an out-of-network position, you would be charged an out-of-network rate on your insurance. Now, the No Surprises Act was passed in 2022, and that has since mitigated a lot of these activities. There were some other pretty high-profile cases when I was there, including the Volkswagen case. So Volkswagen was lying about the amount of emissions that their cars were producing, and the Federal Trade Commission decided to prosecute them for this. Also, it was the first prosecution of a pyramid scheme or an MLM company. This was the Herbalife case. This happened around the time I joined the Federal Trade Commission. And here's the thing, a lot of the work that we did was not covered by the news. Most of you have probably never heard of any of the things that I just mentioned. But in some of these cases, like the consumer protection cases, the goal was to get money back to the consumers that had been harmed in this particular scenario. It also prevents mergers and acquisitions that could result in higher prices. That also could harm the American people. And as someone who graduated with a degree in economics and statistics, I could have made at least twice as much as I made at the Federal Trade Commission. However, for me, the goal was not to make money. The goal was to make a difference. It was to serve